JC's crew's headed this way to bump you. And they all got shanks.
Bone tells him to get out of there immediately and prepares himself mentally.
You got to the count of 5.
They take it as an offense, and don't, so Bones takes off his shirt and uses his martial arts skills to effortlessly beat every single one of them. Scenes cut to 2 rookie drug sellers selling some drugs to a junkie in front of an orphanage, whose old caretaker threatens them to get off his block. There, Bone pays him a visit and asks for a room for rent, claiming he read the sign outside. The old man takes him inside and introduces him to Tamara, who takes him to his room. She imposes a lot of rules, including no consumption of alcohol, drugs, or loud music in the house. She also forbids him to bring any women here because she is raising kids. Bone agrees to the terms and starts living there. That night, Bones attends a street fight organized by an Asian named Pinball. We see 2 fighters amusing the audience with their fight. The winner beats the crap out of his opponent and breaks his arm, showing there are no rules when it comes to street fighting. As Pinball hypes him up among the crowd and hands him his victory money, the film's antagonist, James, arrives with his girl, Angela, and his Asian sidekick. James takes a first look in the crowd and spots Bone looking at his girl, but as he attempts to take a second look, Bone vanishes. Pinball introduces the fighters for the next round, one of whom is a raging cowboy, while the other is James's fighter called the Hammerman, given his bulky, hard body build. Hammerman loses his temper and takes the fight with the cowboy so personally that he starts beating him to a pulp even after he's won, so Pinball brings him back to his senses and breaks the fight. He hands James the victory money, a thick roll certainly, which James appreciates. When Pinball returns to his truck momentarily, he's startled by Bone, who's broken into his truck already. Bone offers him to make him his fighter, but Pinball doesn't trust working with him until Bone gives him cash to start the fight and take 20% of the bet money he's going to win, and 40% if Pinball invests his own cash. Pinball takes the cash and takes him out to introduce him to James, who's busy getting a gig from a mystery man to take care of someone named Daryl. James spots him behind in his car but never gets to see him. Bone approaches him and keeps staring at Angela. Like all men, James gets insecure and begins kissing Angela in front of him to assert dominance. Pinball quickly introduces Bone as his new fighter to reduce the heat between James and Bone, after which they part ways. Pinball warns Bone never to look at his girl or make any moves with her if he wants himself to live. Meanwhile, James takes out his anger on Angela while repetitively saying,
"Don't you ever do that again,"
which she doesn't understand. As James and his gang leave for Daryl's, Bone plays his first round, in which he beats his opponent, who's twice his size. He kicks him in the guts once and delivers a flying kick to his face, which knocks him out in an instant. Seeing this, Pinball gets excited and starts dreaming about milking money out of Bone. He takes him out for a drive, where he shares his plans to get Bone to fight with James's fighter once Bone gets the hang of fighting, because he can squeeze more money out of him during the betting. The first thing that strikes Bone's mind is Angela, so he asks Pinball about her. We see Angela, on the other hand, doing drugs. Pinball reveals that James was attracted to Angela so much that he framed his husband and got him arrested. Angela was pregnant, so when she delivered the baby, James gave it away, just so he could keep Angela to himself. Ever since, she's been his hostage girlfriend. On the antagonist's side, James and his thugs feast with Daryl, after which James bludgeons Daryl to death. That night, Pinball drops Bone off at his place, where he feels alone, while James goes home to Angela and tries to be romantic with her. When she shows no emotions towards him, James leaves her be. The next morning, his Asian sidekick shows up at his kitchen, where he's cutting meat for his pet dogs. The sidekick shows him the video of Bone knocking out his first opponent in 2 kicks, which James finds very impressive. He brings the sidekick along to feed his dogs, during which he accidentally cusses at the dogs, so James threatens to unleash his barking dogs at him if he profanes inside his house one more time. On the other hand, Bone starts his day by playing chess on the house's porch with the old man. Tamara sees those rookie drug sellers talking to one of the kids she's raising, so she yells at him to return to the house. The old man also tells them to walk off their block, but they begin cussing at him. The second Bone stands up. They run away like weasels. Simultaneously, Pinball comes to pick him up, which Tamara doesn't approve of, but he goes anyway. Pinball takes him to another street fight, where there are 2 girls brutally coming at each other and fighting with no rules. Pinball sets up the bet on Bone's behalf with the organizer of the street fight and enrolls him in the next round, in which Bone easily knocks out his opponent with his martial arts moves.
2 at a time! Pay me, Tattoo!
Wait. What'd you say? 2 at a time?
Huh?
Your man as good as he says he is? Let's do it.
That's double. Want to double up again?
Hey, you said this motherfucker was a beginner. You said he just got started on me.
The organizer turns out to be a sore loser who refuses to give Bone his victory money, which he puts in his crotch instead, and threatens Bone to get it himself. So he rips off his crotch to get the money and throws it at Pinball. Moving forward, Pinball takes him to multiple fights, which he wins every time and makes Pinball rich with the bet money. One night, he returns home with a cut on his forehead, which Tamara takes note of and offers to aid it. As she puts a bandage over it, Bone compliments how she takes care of the orphan kids all by herself. She also compliments his Tai Chi, which she finds relaxing. Bone ends up practicing Tai Chi with her to relax her. The next morning, Tamara wakes up to the sight of Bone teaching the little orphan moves, while one of the drug sellers is seen knocked out by the roadside, presumably by Bone for approaching the kid. He also plays chess with the old man and bonds with him. On the other hand, James is seen attending to his dirty business. He's seen hurting a girl in an alley with his car. The girl's scared of his wrath and tries to climb the fence to run away. He asks her to tell her side of the story in order to be spared, but she keeps trying to climb the fence. This hurts James, and he gets his sidekick to smash her with their car. They ditch her and reverse their car from the alley, where they see Bone's old man witnessing the crime scene. Scenes cut directly to the sidekick pumping steroids in Hammerman, who's to fight with Bone in Pinball's street fight. James confidently puts on a large sum of money on the bet, but Hammerman disappoints him by losing to Bone. While Bone shows fast reflexes to dodge all his attacks and strike back to knock him out. James doesn't take this personally and invites Bone for dinner at his place. Bone happily accepts the invitation and shows up at his place with Pinball, where Bone can't stop staring at Angela. James shows Bone footage of world champions and persuades James to fight on a bigger scale and earn millions, rather than wasting his talent on street fighting. Bone takes it into consideration, but when James feels he's not fully sure, he sends Angela to convince him. That's when he takes her to a room alone and reveals that her husband, Danny, has sent him to rescue Angela from James. Angela gets perplexed by this statement, so to prove his loyalty, Bone shows her a picture of her with Danny, which Danny personally gave to him. Danny turns out to be the guy who was warning Bone about the JC gang in prison. Bone reveals Danny was his only friend in prison, whom James got killed by the JC gang. So before dying, Danny wished for Bone to free his wife, which is why he pretended to be a street fighter to enter James's circle the second he got out of prison. Since Angela is pumped with drugs, all she can do is cry and show helplessness, so Bone reveals that he knows where his son is, which reveals he's staying at Tamara's because one of the orphans there is Angela and Danny's son. Angela agrees to cooperate with him, so he takes her to James and asks that he give her to him in exchange for the big fights. Since James wants to capitalize on Bone so bad, he gives him Angela's custody. Bone admits her in a rehabilitation center to heal her before she sees her son. Meanwhile, James puts a suitcase full of money on bet for Bone's next match within the rich society. When Bone returns home that day, he finds the cops investigating the murder of the old man, not knowing James has him killed for witnessing his crime. He ends up comforting Tamara in these times, but James barges in there, showing no mercy to Angela's kid. He lashes out at him for admitting Angela to rehab and realizing Bones knows too much about him. When he puts a gun to Tamara's head, Bone promises to fight for him and saves Tamara, whom he assures safety. James returns to his car and tells his sidekick to attack Pinball. The sidekick takes his thugs and Hammerman to the bar to attack Pinball, but Bone shows up there with a gun and shoots every thug working for James. Now he tells Pinball he's going to get James to confess about framing and killing Angela's husband, so he can film it and send it back to Pinball, which he should send to the police. Bone marches up to the fighting site and gets James to confess what he did to Danny. He records everything and sends it to Pinball, who immediately calls the cops and tells them James's current location, after which we see Bone putting up a hell of a fight with the rich party's man. Bone purposefully taps out the last minute to lose and get on James's nerve. James ends up attacking him with his sword, but Bone uses his sword to cut off his hand and run away when the cops raid. The next morning, we see Bone handing all his earned money to Tamara and requesting that she take care of Angela and her son. He leaves after striking this deal. When Angela returns from rehab and reunites with her son for the first time, the film ends.